A childless man asked a carpenter to carve a piece of wood into the shape of a boy and took it home as if he were his son. When the wife saw the small wooden doll, she happily accepted her husband's good intention. That night, the wooden doll suddenly came to life and called her mother. The woman woke up frightened, and together with her husband, they watched the doll in amazement all night. At last, they had a son. Later, a priest named the boy Pedro. In the blink of an eye, he had already grown into a strong young boy. Pedro asked his father for 8 coins. His father opened a chest and let him take whatever he wanted. He took only the 8 coins and ran to the blacksmith's workshop. When the master blacksmith saw the boy shining like the sun, he realized he was special. Pedro told the master he wanted to buy the first sword he had ever made. The master then pulled out a rusty sword and a sheath from a pile of scrap. Pedro put the sword at his waist, and it seemed as if it had been made just for him. He returned home happily, leaving the coins behind. The next day, Pedro took his father to the market. He squeezed through the crowd and saw 2 oxen tied with golden chains. The owner of the oxen promised that whoever could cut the chains would keep the oxen. Pedro ran forward and, swinging his sword, cut the chains. Instantly, the sound of the strike echoed across 12 countries. Then the oxen wagged their tails and ran back to the corral. The owner approached Pedro and gave him some instructions, which he carefully listened to and remembered. Back at the corral, Pedro burned 12 pieces of wood until the embers turned black, then poured coal over them. He then called his father, tapped his fingers on the left corner of the door, and suddenly a flower vase on the wall began pouring red wine, while from the right corner white wine flowed. He set a table and told his father that whenever someone passed by their door, they could come in and drink the wine. Pedro also said that if one day his father saw an ox cart stopped at the door, he should jump inside, because the red wine would turn into water and the white wine would become fresh blood. That would mean Pedro had died. If his father wanted to find him, he should take the ox cart, because only it would know where Pedro was. 12 days later, Pedro announced he would travel to other countries. The wooden boy set off. After visiting 11 countries, he arrived at the castle of the king of the 12th country. Pedro hoped the king would let him work as a carpenter as long as he could eat and drink. The old king agreed and was very pleased with his work. During that time, the king's daughter fell in love with the capable Pedro and asked her father to allow them to marry. The king, thinking Pedro was a good young man, agreed. However, it was not long before the king received a letter that brought him to tears, as it called him to summon his troops for battle. Upon hearing this, Pedro told the king not to be sad, because he would defeat the enemies as if they were mere scraps of paper. So Pedro went alone and used his sword to kill a great number of enemy soldiers. But in the end, he slipped and fell, and the enemies seized the opportunity to kill him and bury him in the ground. The next morning at dawn, an ox cart appeared at Pedro's house. His father jumped inside, and when he saw that the red wine had turned into water and the white wine into blood, he was shocked, as he had not expected that day to come. He immediately set out in the cart to search for his son. At that moment, 2 divine beasts descended from the sky, shaking the earth. The oxen began to dig, and finally found Pedro, already lifeless. The beasts joined their horns to piece his body back together and breathed his soul back into him. Pedro awoke from his sleep and returned to the castle. In the end, the king gathered his subjects and handed the throne over to the brave Pedro.